there's a feeling that if Trump is able to stay focused on that message, that is a winning message. But we've seen him just utterly unable to do that because he is someone who believes that he wins when he fights. He is someone who loves to go after his opponents, often in false or personal terms. And I would be shocked if he were able to simply stop doing that from now until November. It's just not his style.
Molly Ball from Chicago with the Wall Street Journal is on the line. Hello to you, Molly.
Hi, happy to be here.
I'm good. It's lovely to hear from you, Molly. And we met when I was in Milwaukee, and now we're talking again. It's going to be quite a week, isn't it? Can I just ask you first of all, Molly, just about something which is breaking as I speak, pretty much literally, where Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, is in Israel. He's been talking about the prospects, such as they are, for some sort of ceasefire deal and final hostage exchange. Earlier today, he was saying maybe the last chance to achieve some sort of deal. The White House has been talking, I know, as optimistically as they've been able to talk about a deal being close at hand for weeks now. And now we hear from Antony Blinken that the Israeli leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, is aboard with a deal. You know, they've got some sort of broad agreement. What are we to read into this, Molly? Do tell us.
Well, I really don't think we know yet. I mean, as you say, excuse me, we've heard for weeks, if not months, that the contours of a deal were in view and that it just needed a little bit of nudging on either side for the parties to agree to it. And given that hasn't happened yet, I think we'll all believe it when we see it. I do think that if there is some kind of resolution to the conflict, that would obviously be a huge relief to the White House and the Democrats as they go into this election season. But it's also the case that as an issue, this has somewhat receded from view. You know, there are thousands of demonstrators here in Chicago, but there's really not a feeling inside the convention that this is a really urgent divide within the party. It has sort of been put on the back burner now that the party is so unified behind Kamala Harris.
That's an interesting point, Molly. As you say, thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators converging on the DNC in Chicago right now. And you say you don't think it's going to be a particular worry for the Democratic Party. So has the White House's view, which includes at this point Kamala Harris, and the position has not diverged from Joe Biden, although she's not seen as being quite as, I don't know, enthusiastically pro-Israel as the president. Has that been priced in by the Democratic base and by American voters? So when we look at the opinion polls shifting, you know, maybe significantly, not by a huge amount, but significantly towards Kamala Harris, that takes account of the position on Israel.
I think it does. I think what we have seen Kamala Harris do since becoming the Democratic nominee is really consolidate the Democratic base. And to the extent that this was an issue for Biden, it was mostly with Democratic-based voters. It was with liberal voters, potentially some younger voters, potentially Arab American or Muslim voters, particularly in a state like Michigan, where they are a very small but still a potentially significant proportion of the electorate. So, you know, Kamala Harris has really generated a lot of enthusiasm among the Democratic base to the point where these divisions do not loom nearly as large. I think when you had Joe Biden on top of the ticket and there were a lot of Democratic-based voters who weren't super excited about him, this issue seemed potentially more significant. But from what we have seen in the streets so far, it doesn't, and I wasn't here in 1968, but, you know, this isn't an issue like the Vietnam War where it has really convulsed the entire country. It is not an American war, right? It's a conflict in which America has interests at stake, but it is not, but you don't have, you know, American troops being called up in the same way you did in Vietnam. So it simply is not weighing on the party or the country in quite the same way.
Okay, I mean Theo and Martina are here with me. I'm sure they're keen to pick your brain as well. But just a word on Joe Biden, who speaks in a few hours' time. It's obviously going to be a big moment at the start of the convention. Is it going to be entirely predictable, do you think, Molly? I mean, he can be relied on, one imagines, to just put everything he can into saying, look, she's my girl, make her your girl, and gloss over any anger that he must, I imagine, still be feeling at being driven out the way that he was.
Well, look, this was Joe Biden's decision to make, and he made it. So whatever residual unhappiness he may feel about it, he has taken ownership of this decision. And he has said that the reason that he made the decision was because he wants his party to win this election. He believes it's important for the future of democracy. So I think we can expect him to lean into that and continue to do everything he can to make the case for Kamala Harris, who, of course, he chose to make his vice president, and he chose to endorse within minutes of stepping off the ticket himself. So he really has a lot invested in her success. And I think he may feel some dismay over the way that the party has rushed to embrace her. There's not a lot of residual sentiment here about Joe Biden, and not a lot of regret among the Democratic delegates. They feel like they made a good move in moving past him, and they don't want to be fixated on what they see as the past. So nobody begrudges him this moment in the spotlight to enumerate his accomplishments and make the case for the ticket, but there's not a lot of regret about moving past Joe Biden and embracing Kamala Harris instead.
I bet that's entirely true. And if he still feels a bit sore, and somewhere deep inside, I reckon he must still feel a little bit sore. He's going to get the soothing balm of the love of thousands of Democrats in the convention hall in Chicago in a few hours' time.
Molly, are people going to be looking quite closely at Dr. Jill Biden's speech? Because, of course, she was very disappointed with the way her husband was treated by certain senior members of the Democrat Party. Are people going to be looking to see whether she can manage to mask her disappointment?
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if any of that comes through on the convention stage. As you know, these events are really much more about cheerleading the ticket and putting on a show for the public. The convention, as we saw in Milwaukee, is essentially a week-long infomercial for the party, and the Democrats are feeling like they have the opportunity to offer a sense of unity to the country, much like the Republicans did a month ago in Milwaukee. That this is a party that is full of energy, that is unified, that is excited and looking forward to November. A very different set of emotions than I think we might be seeing had they not made the switch at the top of the ticket. So certainly we have heard and reported plenty about the raw feelings on the part of the Biden family. But again, this is a decision that Joe Biden made, and that I think we can expect him and his family to continue to argue in favor of, because to the extent that he and Jill Biden, the First Lady, and everybody around him is concerned about his legacy, they believe that legacy hinges on whether Kamala Harris wins the election in November.
Yeah, I mean, his legacy, Molly, would have been so stained had he not taken the decision that he'd taken, and then went to what the polls were suggesting would be a pretty much inevitable defeat. That would have been what Joe Biden was remembered for. As it is, he's going to get all the love any human being could hope to get tonight in Chicago. Then it's over to Kamala to finish the job. Martina.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you, Molly, I just wanted to ask what you think the impact will be about these pro-Palestinian protests, because I think what remains unclear is how Kamala Harris will tackle a policy on Israel. We know she does not have a very clear policy on weapons embargo, for instance, and she was actually one of the first big Democrats to call for a ceasefire. But since then, do you think that going forward she will take a different stance from Joe Biden?
No, I don't think she will take a different stance from Joe Biden. I think she has embraced this administration's policies, which include continued support for Israel. She may put it in slightly different terms, and we have heard that some in that anti-Israel camp have felt that her rhetoric was more sympathetic. But it's simply different rhetoric on substantially the same policy. She has backed this administration and what it has done on this issue. And again, I think that while it is an issue that divides some Democrats, and there is a contingent on the left that would like to see her take a different stand, it is, first of all, not an issue that divides the parties, right? If anything, most people believe that Donald Trump would be even less sympathetic to the Palestinian cause than a Biden or a potential Kamala Harris presidency. And second, it is simply not one of American voters' top concerns in this election. I saw a poll last week that something like 14% of people said that it was a significant voting issue for them. So, most American voters are much more concerned with the economy, with immigration, with abortion, with other issues besides what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah. Do you reckon, Molly, that Donald Trump has now found a clear way to go after Kamala Harris? I mean, I see all these reports that he's being advised by people, wiser heads, if you like, around him to lay off the personal stuff. I mean, those weird attacks on Kamala Harris, having decided to label herself a black woman, for example, and deliberately mispronouncing her name and basically playing the race card in different ways. Now it seems to be the line of attack is about her being just too left-wing, being communist, being Comrade Kamala, that sort of stuff. And there's a curious, striking image on social media of it's obviously an AI image. It's entirely made up, obviously, but of a mass rally with a hammer and sickle fluttering over the heads. Is that going to be a more productive line of attack in your judgment, Molly?
Well, I think the short answer to your first question, whether he has figured this out, is no. I think, and the Republicans are still flailing around a little bit to find what should be their main line of attack. But this idea that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are too liberal for the country is certainly the point that most Republicans think is the most effective line of attack, tying her to the left wing of the party, which of course she has been affiliated with in the past in her career, coming from San Francisco. Most Americans in polls do have qualms about her being too left wing, do think that she is potentially too liberal to lead the country. But then also tying her to the policies of this administration, tying her to Joe Biden, who of course is so unpopular, tying her to the economic policies and the immigration policies that have led to a situation that Americans are overwhelmingly quite unhappy with. So there's a feeling that if Trump is able to stay focused on that message, that is a winning message. But we've seen him just utterly unable to do that because he is someone who believes that he wins when he fights. He is someone who loves to go after his opponents, often in false or personal terms. And I would be shocked if he were able to simply stop doing that from now until November. It's just not his style.
I think one of his advisors, who was brought back into the fold, wrote a book called Let Trump Be Trump. It doesn't really need to be written. Trump is going to be Trump, whatever anyone has to say about that. And on this sort of line, this sort of campaigning stuff, Martina, we were struck earlier on by that social media of Donald Trump endorsing a social media posting suggesting that Taylor Swift was a Trumpy.
Yeah, I think what's happening about the US election and social media, especially we were mentioning X, for instance. I was taken aback about the amount of fake news I'm seeing on X about the US presidential election. And we know, of course, that Elon Musk supports Donald Trump. And we know also that he's perhaps using algorithms to push the Trump campaign. And even, me, a UK journalist, I shouldn't really be getting so much content from the US election, of course, a little bit. But if you look at my entire timeline, it almost seems that it's all based on US election stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I just think that Kamala Harris, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts, Molly, is she able to effectively fight back against this narrative? And has she actually managed to work out her own game on social media to appeal to those younger voters and actually turn that appeal to younger voters who don't, certainly in this country, don't necessarily vote, but actually turn that into to cold hard votes in this election? Will she be successful in doing that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, if you are shocked by the amount of fake news on X, I wonder where you've been for the last several years, right? I mean, this is just the way it is. It's always been sort of a cesspool, and certainly AI may make it worse, but it's always, I mean, I remember in 2016, Trump falsely claimed to have been endorsed by the Pope, and that wasn't true either. Taylor Swift has not endorsed Donald Trump. She's a Democrat. If she's going to endorse anyone, I would expect it to be Joe Biden, as she did 4 years ago. And given how popular she is, that could be a significant, sorry, not Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, but the Democrats. And that could be a boost considering how popular she is. And on the one hand, the vast majority of American voters are not on X, formerly known as Twitter. It is an insider conversation that's sort of a bubble that doesn't reflect, the mainstream of where normal people are living their lives. That being said, we do know that a large proportion of younger voters do get their news from TikTok, and where Joe Biden was having a very hard time getting anyone to pay any attention to him on TikTok, and there were a lot of sort of pro-Trump memes and influencers, Kamala Harris is doing much better in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is her team's deftness, but most of it is just organic because she, again, is just a younger candidate who voters are much more excited about. We've seen the turning of her awkward moments into these pro-Harris memes, the coconut stuff and so on. So there's an organic enthusiasm for her candidacy that just wasn't there for Joe Biden, no matter how hard they tried to make it happen. And that is a significant source, I think, of her momentum going forward. Crowds are not the same thing as votes, but certainly as a candidate, you'd rather be able to draw large crowds than not.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing her be able to go into the final stretch of this election with a lot of enthusiasm behind her.
Yeah, it was another, and it looked weird from this side of the Atlantic. And no doubt to you and where you are too, to see Donald Trump arguing that the crowd that greeted Kamala Harris off her plane the other day was entirely fictional, that there was nobody there, and it was AI. Such a wildly, wholly, totally implausible line of attack. It just made you blink. I suppose it is possible. I think it was the Chicago Sun-Times, Molly, which is suggesting that Taylor Swift might even make an appearance at the end of the week, which I don't know how much that will shift the dial, but it will certainly drive the Donald pretty crazy, wouldn't it?
I obviously don't know anything about that, but it is always the case that a Democratic convention is a much more celebrity-studded affair than the Republicans tend to get. I'm not breaking any news here by telling you that Hollywood and the entertainment industry tend to be pretty left-wing. But there again, I think we see a lot more enthusiasm for Kamala Harris than we previously saw for Joe Biden, and I think we will see a lot more celebrities show up at this convention, whether scheduled or not. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some surprise celebrity appearances in order to get these delegates excited and communicate to the country the message that they are trying to send out about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, which is principally that this is a forward-looking ticket. This is a younger, more energetic, more future-oriented ticket. The whole theme of the campaign is that they are moving forward into the future where their opposition is fixated on the past. And so all of that helps them make this case.
But there are serious, the economy's stupid, and there are still questions, aren't there? Kamala Harris and her promises of legislation to stop price gouging, to put limits on price increases. There are serious worries about that in the business world, and questions to be asked and answered about that. That's still unresolved, that stuff, isn't it?
There's a lot we don't know about Kamala Harris's policy agenda, and on the price gouging thing, this seems to be one of these sort of populist campaign promises that has little chance of being enacted in any real way beyond simply a vigorous enforcement of existing, antitrust laws. But it is a signal that she is moving in a populist direction on economics. And I think your point is a good one, that, this remains an electorate that is skeptical of the Democratic Party and how this administration has handled the economy. Kamala Harris, despite how she has sort of leapfrogged forward, is still basically in a tie with Donald Trump in the national and the swing state polls, and not even at the level where Joe Biden was in 2020 or Hillary Clinton was in 2016.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a tough fight all the way till the election. There's clearly an openness on the part of the electorate to Kamala Harris. They like that she's different, that she's a fresh face, but they want to know what she's about, and they don't feel like they know that yet.